Welcome to Insights from the Couch, where real conversations meet real life at midlife.
We're Colette and Laura, two therapists and best friends, walking through the journey right alongside you. Whether you're feeling stuck, restless, or just unsure of what's next, this is a space for honest conversations, messy truths, and meaningful change.
And our Midlife Masterclass is now open. If you're looking to level up, get into action, and make midlife the best season yet, go to insightsfromthecouch.org and join our waitlist. Now let's dive in. We're so excited for today's episode. We have Dr. Nay here with us talking about trauma bonding and, more importantly, how to survive and thrive after you've been in a trauma bonded relationship. Dr. Nay, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start out by just introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit about you and your credentials, and then we'd love to hear about your story too.
Yeah, so I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I got my doctorate in somatic psychology, and I went back to school when I was about 38, 39. So I went back to school much later in life. And if I go way back to my life, I grew up in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. And then at 22 years old, I met my infamous ex-husband, the Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort, at a party in the Hamptons. And we were in the quintessential trauma bond for 8 years, unbeknownst to me. I knew something was very wrong, but I didn't really know why, because back then there were no terms like narcissism and trauma bonds and coercive control. And so I did leave him. And then I moved to California, and that's when I went back to school. And I have a private practice, had a private practice in California. And what happened is that all of these smart, kind, beautiful women were coming into my office, being controlled, being abused, being financial coercion, sexual coercion. So I said, I got to go back to the research. And then I wrote my book, Run Like Hell. And now it's become my specialty.
Yeah, in the book, you said 75% of the women you see are in trauma bonded relationships.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to go so many places, but first, just to set this all up, and I do want to ask you a little bit more about your life, but can you define a trauma bonded relationship? Because this is one of those things that is constantly misused and miscategorized, especially on social media.
Yeah, so a trauma bond relationship is a toxic, dysfunctional relationship between two emotionally attached individuals. You're not going to have a trauma bond, with the barrister at Starbucks, right? You have to be connected to them. But what makes it different than just a regular toxic relationship is that one of the partners, the pathological partner, wants power and control over their lover. And so they will use various forms of manipulation, coercion, abuse to have control over this partner. And then the partner feels very entrapped. And it has to have two things, though, for it to be a trauma bond. Two conditions: a power imbalance. The pathological partner has the power and they abuse and exploit their power. And then the second thing is intermittent reinforcement. And that's the most addictive behavioral pattern where 70% of the time the partner is dirty John. They're cruel, unkind, controlling. But that 30% of the time they're Romeo. And that's when they're the kind, generous, helpful part.
Yeah. Because Colette and I were sort of arguing about, or not arguing, but debating, because there's plenty of partnerships that get into this bad place where there's a lot of conflict and there's a abuse repair dynamic where
right.
It gets really nasty and then a lot of attempt to heal that. But what if, if a lot of relationships can devolve to that place, but if it starts off as pretty healthy and there's stress and then it devolves to that place, you don't put it in the same category as this pathological person.
No, because, we all fall in love and our rose-colored glasses are off. And then over time, we get to meet people, right? They show their true selves. And we all have attachment wounds.
Yes.
We all have some form of relational trauma, right? I've never met a perfect set of parents, myself included. So then everybody's insecurities and, rejection sensitivity and all these other things that are tied into your attachment emerge. And so that can cause conflict and friction. for sure. But we call that more like situational couples violence is just the real term for it.
Yep.
But really, it's just regular fighting in a relationship. So that's very different because what's different about the pathological person and the trauma bond is what's the motivation behind the behavior.
Mm.
The intention is to control you.
Okay. And right. So you're saying two distinct features are that there's a power imbalance and the pathological partner has the power. And then there's this highly addictive, and you are right. I mean, intermittent reinforcement, that classic study where the birds peck themselves to death when they only got food sporadically. That's the most addictive thing. So that's another feature of these trauma bonded relationships, that they behave like Dirty John half the time, or 70% of the time, and then 30% of the time they're Romeo. So you're constantly confused, and you're in, and you're love bombed, and then you're abused. And then, so this is another thing Laura and I were talking about. Is this the same as narcissistic abuse? Is this a first cousin? Is this overlap?
Yeah. I mean, narcissistic abuse is such a broad term, right? And I don't really use that term because to me, the pathological lover in a trauma bond is really just much more than a narcissist. Because a narcissist is selfish, exploitative, very image focused, and they can be, very controlling as well. But that's why I call them pathological lover, because what I say, partner will use, harm, exploit, and betray you or whoever they're in love with to get their needs met for money, power, pleasure, and status. And what happens is that under that umbrella pathological lover, they're going to have a cluster B, like antisocial narcissism or borderline. They're going to have a compulsive process disorder, such as sex or gambling addiction. They're going to be impulsive. They'll probably have a mood disorder. They can have substance abuse.
Oh my gosh.
Right? But they're dark tetrad because sometimes they have mixes of psychopathy, Machiavellianism, and sadism.
Right.
So it's much more than narcissism. And that's, that just makes me crazy. But
no, I'm glad you're pointing that out. And I think it's important for people to understand, because a lot of the time, first of all, the way I hear people talking about trauma bonded is they think two people are bonding through their traumas, right?
Yes.
And I understand it's a literal breaking down of the term, but that's not what we're talking about here. And these are individuals. I love that you make this distinction. And maybe we could talk about your experience a little bit here, because a lot of the time, all this stuff, the Machiavellianism, the dark triad behavior, the mood disorders, the addictive behaviors, right? This goes beyond narcissism, but this person doesn't present like this at the beginning. It's like if you touched a hot stove that burned your fingers off, you pull your hand off immediately.
Right.
These people are often charismatic, charming. They woo you. Even if we all know love bombing is a thing now, which never used to be talked about. I was love bombed in every relationship I was ever in, and I just thought that meant love. Even if we know that happens, when you're in it and somebody is pursuing you and making you feel like $1,000,000 and telling you what you want to hear, these people show up more like that at the beginning, and then they pull out of that. They're Romeo, and then they shift into Dirty John when you're already hooked, right?
Correct. Because if they showed up, as Dirty John, we'd run the other way.
Right.
So in the beginning, they're love bombing, they're love conning, they're hunting, they're luring you in because they're very predatory.
They're hunting.
Yeah, they're hunting. So they pull you in, and they're usually the most magnanimous. I mean, not all the time, because you can have people that are a little bit more covert, but they're usually very charming, magnanimous people.
Yep. Yeah. And that's how, and I really appreciated that you also said at the beginning of your book that a lot of therapists are kind of putting it on the woman. Like, well, let's look at you and like, what made you fall for this person, and how important it is to say, you're not responsible for this abuse. And this can happen to anybody because of how these people show up.
Correct. Well, that's really one of the reasons I wrote my book, is to really turn all this victim blaming language, which we see all over the internet, even to this day, on its head.
Yeah.
Because, when I was in my trauma bonds with my ex, what happened was that it was tons of love bombing, as the movie shows, and it was fast and furious and very intense. But he was such an addict that what happened is that back then it was like, he's an addict and you're codependent. So that made me feel like I was enabling him. It's like, oh my God, I'm codependent. I got to fix myself. I got to fix myself. And not that I didn't have things to work on. Of course I did. I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know what boundaries were. But that's a very developmental process, I think, in life as you develop as an individual. But what that label did was that it made me feel like I created his rage and his drug addiction.
Yeah.
Which I did.
It's so interesting because I was like reading your book and you have some really great scenarios with different women. And I couldn't believe some of the pathology that is lurking under some of these men. It's not only like drug addiction, but it's also process addictions and sex addiction, even with like male partners. Yes. I mean, do you see some really crazy behavior?
Honestly, there's really nothing that shocks me anymore. But I mean, of course that doesn't take away my empathy, right? I'm not jaded in that way, but all those stories in the book are true.
Yeah.
I didn't make any of those up.
Right. It's terrifying to think that those people exist.
They all exist.
Oh yeah. I can attest to that, both professionally and personally, sadly. Yeah. So, and you also talk about how you mentioned in the book, how it was also traumatic for you to have, he writes his story, it gets made into a movie, so now your life from his perspective, this malignant person who's abused you, that's out for the world to see. Yeah. I mean, what was that like for you when that movie came out?
Yeah, luckily I've been in therapy since I'm 23 because the second I met him, I put myself into therapy because I knew I couldn't handle him or the life. So luckily I've been in therapy a long time and I'd worked through so much. And I was getting my doctorate at that time. So I was really centered in myself. And really, I was very concerned about my children, first and foremost. Yeah. But they knew about their dad. So this wasn't a secret to them. And so, it was weird because I always say it was bad enough to go through my Greek tragedy of a life the first time. And then I've escaped to California. I was like, we're done with that. No. He wrote a book, made a movie, and it was a blockbuster. And so what I did is I actually did a lot of dream therapy around it.
Wow.
I went to this therapist and he actually happened to be an expert in dream therapy. So I did that. And then I just, said to myself, I have to surrender. Like, there's no way I'm going to fight like Martin Scorsese, and I don't want to make that my life's mission anyway.
Right.
And so I offer that to people because here it is, this thing that could seem very horrible, right? Turned into a gift because I get to take the most misogynistic movie on the planet and help women every day.
Yeah, it's a calling card now, right? I mean, people, you have the street cred, you've lived through it, you will understand.
Yeah. So we never know. And I didn't really talk about it when the movie came out because I really had nothing to say. Because I only really got interested in trauma bound. So you think it would have been obvious to me, but that's just not the way I work. I have to get hit over the head a few times.
Yeah.
But I really didn't start to talk about it till 2019.
Wow. So not that long ago.
Yeah. It came out in 2013. Right. Yeah. So I didn't talk about it for 7 years because I had nothing to say. But then one of my young girls said, you need to do a TikTok. And I was like, I'm not doing a TikTok. I'm 54, please. He said, you have to do it. So I did it and we did it about that and it went viral.
Oh, yeah. What was that first TikTok about? I want to go watch it.
What was I think I said, could you imagine what it's like to have your life made into a movie?
Yeah.
Right. What a good hook.
Yeah.
And then I just said, there's his narrative, there's my narrative, and I'm going to start to share my narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So, okay. How true was, I know it's his narrative and then also it's whatever the movie, I've seen the movie. I haven't read his book, so I don't know how much they changed it. Very similar. Okay. So are there parts of what's depicted that felt true or are representative and what felt accurate and what didn't? Because most of our listeners have probably seen the movie. It was a good movie.
It was an excellent movie. His drug addiction was rampant, and that was very accurate. the ridiculousness, the money, the way they worked in that office. Not that I went to the office very much, but that was a really extreme culture that he had created. I mean, that was very real, that bro culture, that misogynistic bro culture. But what wasn't real was that I really never got jealous. I never threw water in his face. Like, he makes it seem like I'm the one running around mad at him all the time.
Chasing him and like desperate.
Yeah, but I wasn't. I was mad at him mostly because of his drug addiction.
Right.
And his
Were you trying to get him help?
Yes, the whole time.
The whole time.
Yeah, the whole time. But that, finally he did get help, but it was a very dramatic scene. And that's the scene where he, the movie is very different. They do it chronologically different, but the movie where they show him getting violent with me, that was when I told him he had to get sober. I never told him I'm going to take your kids, and he got violent with me, which is, such bullshit that they did it like that.
Yeah.
Was that if you don't get sober, I'm leaving you. Very different, right?
Yes.
And is your thought process at that time like, oh man, if this guy gets sober, he might be a good man underneath of it all?
Yeah. And honestly, I just wanted to save his life.
Yeah.
He was cooking crack in my country kitchen. I was like, you are not going to live.
Right.
Right.
And you have children with this man.
Mounds of cocaine on his desk, like Scarface. I mean, with blood. I was like, this cannot happen.
Right.
So my first thing was really to save his life, and then hoping, that we could have a relationship. But, when somebody kicks you down the stairs backward, like, it's kind of hard to stay in love with them. And especially after all the drug addiction and rage before that. But he took all my clothing and jewelry and lit them in the fire and put them in the fireplace that time. So it was
lots of extreme stuff.
Extreme situation. But he did go to rehab.
Which was a relief to you at that time, right?
Yeah.
You were just like, let me get the hell out of here.
And then a year later, he got arrested. And that's when I finally left him, because I knew I was safe.
Yes. He couldn't come after you.
He couldn't say I was a drug addict. He couldn't say I was the crazy one.
That was your only real way to get out.
Yes.
And you started getting involved with him, or you started dating him when you were only 22. And you said he kind of put the pressure on to get married quickly, like in only 6 months.
Yeah. So that was the coercion, right? That pressure. You have to get married. Or I'm not going to date you. You have to have children, or I'm not going to marry you. Right. So always moving the goalposts, and that coercion. And, I didn't want to get married, and I didn't want to have children right away. Listen, I love my children. They're my best friends. My daughter's a therapist. So I'm happy I had them, but it was all in his time when he said it. And really what happens is that you just become a hollowed out person from being with this sort of aggression and coercion over time.
So the person who abuses you then also becomes the person that you seek for support.
Yes.
And that's part of the insidious nature of this cycle, right? Is that you're dependent on the person who hurts you is the person you're most dependent on.
Yes.
And you start to make yourself smaller and smaller so as to not incur this person's wrath.
Right.
Is this what makes it so hard for people to get out?
Yeah. I mean, there's a few reasons. The first one is fear, right? Because this person usually will dominate, intimidate, threaten. So you fear them. And if they rage a lot, or they fly off the handle a lot, or you never know what's going to happen, like what's going to make them fly off the handle, you definitely fear them. Also, the disparaging can also make you feel a lot of self-doubt, right?
And shame. I'm assuming so much shame. Like you're keeping things secret because
tons of shame.
You do not want to tell people these stories.
No. Yeah. No. So I think that the fear and then the intermittent reinforcement, of course, creates moments where you're like, oh, there's that guy I love.
Right. He's in there.
He's in there. Hope is the hook. And then they make promises. I'm going to move. I'm going to change. I'm going to stop. So there's a lot. And then, financial dependency, emotional dependency, isolation. Confusion. They isolate you. That didn't happen to me. I wasn't isolated, but.
What do you mean you weren't isolated? Like you were able to maintain close friendships and family connections, and he didn't do that part?
No. Okay. Because also he had like a lot of those cronies that worked for him. And then I became friends with their wives.
Were you guys all in the same boat? I mean, did all the wives kind of feel similarly about their own husbands?
I think very similar. I mean, mine was probably the most extreme at that time, but yes, very similar.
Yeah. And it's like a man like that gives permission to other men
Correct.
to act in their worst selves.
Correct. And, these people that see the abuse, but again, if everybody's financially dependent upon him and everybody fears him, right? That's why it's like a cult.
Yeah.
Right. The financial part has to be a huge component of this.
Huge,
Because
especially
money is power.
right.
Yep.
Especially when you have children and they always say to you, you don't have to work. Let me take care of you.
Right. And then you don't have any of your own independent source of money, right? What's going to happen to you? So on top of all this psychological confusion and self-doubt and these glimmers of hope, you fear that you can't support yourself. The shame that you feel for whatever self-blame gets magnified. So it's really difficult to walk away. And yet you do help women do this now all the time. And they don't all maybe have somebody as extreme or a situation as extreme as the Wolf of Wall Street. Although some of the, like Laura, you were saying, some of these cases are really, really extreme.
Yeah.
What's the first place you go with women to start to help them see what's happening or begin to glimpse that it could be different for them?
Yeah. So by the time they get to me or to my community, because I have a trauma bond survivor community, they know they're in a trauma bond or they're like, something's not right here. Right. So, I'm always assessing them. First of all, where are they in the process? Because it's not my job to ever tell a woman to leave, because when a woman leaves is the most dangerous time.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a woman's choice and her choice alone. But when they come to me, the first thing I say is I start to educate them about trauma bonds, coercive control, pathological people, right? So some of the shame starts to dissolve because they're getting validated.
Yeah.
They're not getting crazy. But what I say to them is, you've been in severe relational trauma. We have to stabilize you. So they have to really develop a very intense self-care program. They have to be eating right, sleeping right, exercising, hydrating, because the work of healing trauma is very arduous, right? And especially also if you're trying to leave this person and you're experiencing post-separation abuse. And then the third thing is I said to them, okay, now enough about them. Of course, they can come in and talk to me about them, but we need to turn the mirror back on you. Who are you?
Right.
Yeah.
What do you need? Right? Because they've lost their whole identity. That's a huge symptom. They've lost a sense of self because they have to lose their identity to keep the couple's identity. So I give them attachment assessments, 5-factor model assessments, and development of trauma assessments. And we have a map now of them. We're like,
And they begin to meet themselves again.
They do. And like, here are your strengths. Here are what you're lacking in. These are the resources we have to build up. And so that's how we do it.
And to be clear, like there's no hope for these relationships. It's not like healing takes place and these relationships can shift into something healthy. It's really like you're helping these women prepare themselves to leave.
It's hard. I have a woman right now over 30 years. When you think of all the conditioning that's happened over 30 years, right? And so then the closer the women get to leaving, the more fear comes up, the more emotional dysregulation. So really just holding their hands and saying, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. After 30 years, that's got to be so hard. How long into your relationship with your ex-husband was it until you realized, oh God, even if I don't know the term trauma bond, this is a disaster?
I would say, right away with the coercion, I was very angry about that. So I knew something was off, but I didn't know what it was. It's like, what, like, who is he to tell me when to do these things,
Right.
I was like, oh, he just loves me. Right.
He's just a traditional man.
Yeah. He just wants me.
Yeah.
It's just, he wants to control me, of course. And he wanted me wrapped up. I would say 2 years in.
Okay.
I think where I was really like, we got a problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. And here you are, a smart, successful, loving you're a young woman at the time, but You're not an idiot. None of those things apply to you.
Right.
Did you have that, like, how did this happen to me feeling?
I don't remember that as much as a lot of women do have that feeling. I think I was more, I think I was just so afraid of him. I was just really, I had not grown up with yelling in my home.
Yeah.
So I was not used to rage like that.
So scary.
Yeah, it was really scary. And it was just also overwhelming, right? So it's not even just the trauma bond, it's like the lifestyle.
Right. All of it.
Now I have like servants,
Did you grow up like that with that level of wealth? Like, what was your
No.
experience?
I grew up with a single mother in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
So then I
Yeah.
went back to school. Like I went to cooking school and interior design school and wine classes because I was like, what am I doing with all this?
Right.
So the whole thing was just completely overwhelming, just as the movie depicts.
Yeah.
I think you get that sense in the movie that it's just like, I'm just like always on the run, right?
And it's over the top. Everything's over the top.
Everything's over the top. So I really could barely keep up.
Was
And
there
you're
a message that like you were lucky to have all of this?
Yeah, I'm sure. And I think I told myself that too.
Yeah.
I think I would, rationalize that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's something a lot of women do. I know I hear that in my office, and I was there in my own personal life too. Like you, I went back to graduate school in my mid 30s at 36
Yeah.
after going through a divorce from a traumatic, I don't know that trauma bonded, but if not, maybe close. Or maybe technically, if you were my therapist, you'd be like, Colette, wake up. That was a trauma bonded relationship. But
Yeah.
that was the impetus for me to become a couples therapist because it was I lost myself. I lost my voice. I
Right.
felt so confused. I was afraid to leave for a long time. It's
Yeah.
hard to get out. It really, really is.
It's hard. But you can.
Yeah.
Yes. And do you see women? I mean, you must take such joy in seeing people being able to really help people and see them thrive again. What can you tell our listeners if they're relating to this in their own lives about what life is like on the other side of one of these relationships?
Well, it's so great because first of all, you get your freedom back,
Mm-hmm.
autonomy. You don't get punished for having autonomy, right? You're like these people. I mean, they tell you how to wash their dishes. You're doing the dishes wrong. What's the thermostat on? I mean, they control you down. They micromanage you. So to have that level of freedom in your home again is huge.
Peace.
And,
Yeah.
peaceful, that's the best word for it. And so I always say that, I did like that Tom Cruise risky business dance on the couch, underwear.
In tighty whities.
Yeah, that's what I felt like, just like so celebratory. And, when you have children and you still have to deal with this person, it can be more complicated, of course. But the freedom is priceless.
Yeah. How about these women? Like, do you see that there's a pattern of choosing men that are similar moving forward? Or is there a real sense of like, I've been there, I've done that, I bought the t-shirt, I never want to do that again?
I think that if you're read my book or working with me or in my community, there's a very low chance you'll do it again.
You see it a mile away
amazing.
now, right? You can
Yeah,
smell this.
And so what I find is that now women will say to me, it didn't take me 4 years. It took me 4 months or 4 weeks
Yeah.
To
figure it out, right? So because they're learning to trust themselves more.
Yes.
Women don't trust their intuition. And we know about the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is real. Like you have to trust your intuition.
Your gut will tell you if you're really tuned in.
And so they're learning to also trust themselves again.
Mm.
And that's what keeps them out of return. First, they're tasting that peace and freedom and autonomy. They don't want to go back to that. And now, because you're reconnecting these women to themselves, they can use their own authentic intuition to discern who's safe, who's not, much earlier in the process.
Much earlier because they know the signs. They know what to look out for. They know their attachment patterns. They know their triggers. right? And that doesn't mean it's perfect, but I always say to them, okay, when they're going to go date, we'll just go back, just think of it as a relational lab. Let's not take it so seriously. Let's take the
Yeah.
pressure off.
Experiment.
Just go experiment.
Right. And figure it out, like a little trial and error. Right. But you do
That's right.
so much healing and shoring up of the self and stabilizing and all of that
Correct.
to get to the point where that makes sense.
Correct.
Dr. Nay, what do you know, or what's your feeling about this being flip-flopped, where you have a female who's like a type B personality, who's got a man in a trauma bond?
Yeah,
Is that
can happen.
Do you ever treat that, or is that not really your
one
niche?
guy recently, yes, sometimes. But here's the thing, right? It certainly can happen, but it is, domestic violence and coercive control is a gendered experience, right? But of course it can happen to men too.
Yeah.
And I have many men that follow me and direct message me, and
Are they like trying to date you, or are they?
They're not trying to date me. I'm too old for that. But
you do look like Margot Robbie, or I should say Margot Robbie looks like you, because you're the OG. Yes.
No, but the men do contact me, and because no matter who you are, it's so painful.
Right. So it's men who are not using this as like an inroad. It's people saying, I'm suffering through the same type of dynamic.
Yes.
In a relationship.
Yes, because I think, Colette, maybe you can resonate with this. It's that when you're in it and you don't know what the hell is happening, you feel insane.
Yes.
Right? And then when you finally get terms and words and explanation, you're like, huh?
So normalizing. It's so powerful to not feel alone, and also to have someone help you melt that shame by saying, it's not your fault. You are not responsible for abuse.
Correct.
I think the process addictions, which for our listeners, those are like behavioral addictions rather than to a substance, for example. Right. But when people have sex addiction, porn addiction, those things that are so much more rampant than people realize. When you're the partner on the other side of that, let's just use sex addiction as an example. So many people don't understand that. And even if we do understand, okay, it's not really about me up here, it feels so personal. It feels so rejecting. Those things alone can do such a number on your self-esteem. So there's so many different layers of recovery that are required here.
There's so many, because you have loss of self, you have CPTSD symptoms, right? Complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is caused by relational trauma, and cognitive dissonance, which is the glue of the trauma bond.
Say a little more about that for our listeners.
That's so important. So it's the mental confusion that you feel inside due to the intermittent reinforcement, due to the two masks, because you have two separate relational experiences. So you're like, is he good or is he bad? Am I crazy? I'm crazy. Is the relationship healthy or toxic? And you never land on an answer.
You can't quite make sense. Right. Is it Jekyll or Hyde? Because you're getting both. Right. So the degree of confusion, the cognitive dissonance that's created, that's a huge piece of it. And I think I hear a lot of clients and friends even talk about this in dating, even when people aren't so pathological as, say, a dark triad individual. You get this, you get breadcrumbs, you get the hot and cold behavior. It's a lot of that same mechanism at play.
Yep. And so the cognitive dissonance is the glue of it, because you can't have a trauma bond without cognitive dissonance, right? It's just, they go together. And so, to live in confusion like that and never landing on an answer for those questions, you have 3 different layers of cognitive dissonance. That's 6 different thoughts, always ping-ponging.
And that's where therapy is really helpful, right? Of like really seeing that for what it is.
Yeah. And what I tell them, and this is, I always say, I'm going to say something really painful. And they're like, okay. I said, you weren't dating 2 people. You were dating one manipulative, pathological person.
Ugh.
Yeah. Because the Romeo was a manipulation.
Right. There was no Romeo. Romeo was a mask.
Yeah. to lure you in.
Ooh, I got goosebumps even on my cheeks. It's so true, but it's wow. That's the part
scary.
that people need to come to terms with.
So they need to integrate those two parts of the Dirty John and the Romeo to dissolve the cognitive dissonance. And then the healing can really start too.
Right. And to use the Dirty John thing, because I'm just thinking about, I also loved that show and I followed the real story because it's so fascinating and so horrible, but fascinating. You know, Dirty John acted amazing part of the time. Yeah. That's how he did this con over and over and over again to multiple women. He seemed great. So you're really helping people realize Dirty John is just Dirty John.
That's right.
When he seems like Romeo, that's just a persona that is a manipulative persona of that same malignant person who will hurt you. And it's really crazy when we think about this because love shouldn't hurt. No. And yet there's such an addictive, manipulative, brainwashing, confusion, control element to this. So, you know, don't blame yourself if any of this resonates and applies to you, and help is out there. So Dr. Nate, tell her, I know we all have clients coming up here and I don't want to keep you too long, but tell our audience how they can find you, if they want to work with you, your book, all that good stuff. And we'll have it in the show notes.
Yeah. So first thing, go to my website, drnae.com. Okay. I have so many free assessments, so many free worksheets.
Great.
That's a great place to start. I'm on Instagram, The Real Dr. Nadine, right? I post every single day about this, funny things, educational things.
I love your Instagram.
Wolf of Wall Street things. And then I have my book, Run Like Hell, which is a great book. You can get it audio, ebook, or, you know, hardcover. And then I just launched a community, an online community, because I can't, you know, therapy's expensive and there's only so many hours in a day.
Right.
So for $30 a month, you can join my community and get like 3 to 4 support groups a week. I took my book and put it into a course. I teach it. And then I bring in a live speaker every week. And these women are so validating because I have to democratize what I'm doing because there's so many people out there with this.
Who need help.
People need access. Yeah.
And the women, the way they love on each other and validate each other. I just launched it in February. I can't get over it.
That's the key, right? Like women, when they have that support, they can accomplish so much.
Because we can't build resilience in isolation.
Yeah.
No. Thank you for providing that. And I'm so glad that our listeners, I know there's people listening who are going through this, who know people going through this. Your community sounds incredible. So thanks for providing that resource. Your book's amazing. Everyone, you're going to want to read it. Even if this doesn't apply to you right now, the book's so fascinating. It's so well written. I know you'll get something out of it. Dr. Nate, thank you so much for being here. And thank you all for listening. We hope you got lots of good insights from our couch today, and we'll see you next time.